looked very, very interesting. So let's head there to Lu Miaoyi against Patryk Cieslak. Both players there on 2 points. So as you mentioned, that if they want to qualify to tomorrow's knockout, then they need to start motoring. They need to start stringing some victories together. And here we have a lot of tension in the center, but there is pressure against this knight on b5.
Yeah,
So
we've got a little bit of time. Let's take a look at the opening. And the reason I say that is because I used to play this a lot as a kid. This was kind of like a Scotch gambit type game. So one of our few double king pawns there, we're going to go back to the beginning. After e4, e5, knight f3, knight c6, bishop c4, we had a 2 knights defense. She plays d4. So now we've sort of transposed to a Scotch gambit type system. But she plays e5 right away. Now, castles, I think, is a little bit maybe not more common, but it was more common when I was a kid. And now the knight goes back instead of jumping to e4. So now we're already in a little bit of a land I don't know. The idea of this move is so that this knight's not pinned and white cannot answer with knight takes. So white has to eventually give up the bishop pair to be able to win the pawn back. And the knight, look at this. This is almost like a retrograde chess puzzle. Raymond Smilyan's question is, how did the knight get to b8? And the answer is, it was actually the king's knight that became a queen's knight. No one saw that coming. And now let's get to our live position where the pawns are very imbalanced. A double exclam move. Why is that move so smart? Yovi, you have any idea why? Is it just winning a pawn?
Well, okay. Well, you're setting I can't even say the word. Setting up a trap of c takes b5. You're going to go d6, and you are unleashing an attack against the bishop on e7 and the rook on a8. So it's a brilliant move because, of course, you are sacrificing a piece, even though in practice you're really not.
Let's have some fun. What if, okay, let's go back one move. Actually, the players are going so fast. I was wondering if the pawn took on d5, if you could play knight takes and give the b5 knight. So there was multiple traps there, many of them based on the queen lined up with the rook. We will just leave it at that. Now, pawn to d6 retraps the bishop, but black has actually survived. Black gives the piece back. Black has the queenside pawn majority. Black has better development. This pawn is a bit of a target. So really nice to get out of the opening here with at least an equal position. Black is maybe even easier to play.
Yes, and the question for white is the pawn on e5 going to be a strength or a weakness? You know, rook e1, you're just asking black, are you going to take on e5? Maybe that's possible, but you are setting yourself up in a pin, and things get very, very complicated there.
Yeah,
I don't know
like
what's happening.
Exactly.
Yeah,
I
like
wouldn't
queen
take that
coming
pawn.
to d5. Yeah, I wouldn't take that pawn either. It's a little bit too hot to handle. So I suspect that black will perhaps play some safety first move, queen e6, and then the rooks. Oh, he takes it. Like, these juniors, they are brave.
Yeah, the idea here is if you play f4, then knight f3 check might come. Instead, the bishop comes to f4. This might be a situation where the bishop takes and your pawn takes, and white tries to win that pawn back in 5-10 moves or so. But you can keep the pin for now. White's just going to double rooks and keep the knight exactly where it is in a rather helpless position. So I feel like white is going to win the pawn back and get back to equality, but no more. That's my guess.
Right. I actually really liked your plan of going bishop takes knight and then throwing in queen b3 check. And then that way you could win back the pawn and then at least ruin black's pawn structure somewhat. But Lu Miaoyi, she's from the Chinese school of chess, which is very much they don't care about material. Instead, activity is everything. So her plan is to simply double up on the E line and then just argue that the pawn on c5 is going to be weak. And eventually, black is going to have to give ground.
Yep, and you know what? My idea of her getting back to equality by just taking on e5 and winning the e5 pawn back later on, I don't think a draw is good enough. I think she needs to think about winning the rest of her games. Patryk is in a situation where he could probably afford maybe one draw. I mean, getting to 6.5 would be a great score, but he can't give away that many points either. Both of these players are actually getting a little bit desperate to catch Sina and Yagiz at the top of the standing. So she finds an outpost for her queen. The knight finally finds safety, but black never got an isolated pawn on the e-file. So you're right. The Wang Yue / Lu Miaoyi School of Chess going for activity, not just trying to get the pawn back, but she just, of course, runs the danger of just being down a pawn in the endgame.
And as you mentioned, you can't capture the pawn on c5 because there was a back rank mate there on e1. And on the camera, it looks like both players are very, very comfortable. Lu Miaoyi looks very untroubled. H4. No, she doesn't go H3, H4, perhaps setting up ideas of going H5, H6. Oh, that pawn is going to come a marching. And this bishop on G3 at the minute is not entirely working, but it can relocate itself to F2. So I was thinking of ideas such as F3, bishop F2. There's also H6 ideas when white wants them. So white does have enough activity to offset this material imbalance. And maybe white has to actually settle for repeating moves here, because otherwise it's going to be difficult.
Yeah, she might have just enough activity to have equality, but nothing more. Quick twirl of the hair there for Patryk. And he's wondering, is Lu Miaoyi gonna? No, Lu Miaoyi avoids the draw, maybe based on tournament standings. And now black has a draw if black wants it. But knight to G4 forces the king into a terrible spot. I think he's going to eventually play it. No, he just brings the queen back to D5, centralizing the queen.
Yeah, and just to give you a big update, the other two games have finished with Mohaved winning with the white pieces and Henry Tudor defeating Yagiz Erdogmus. So things are livening up as we enter the final stretch.
Black can trade queens and does so. Now white can get an outside pass pawn. Is the pawn catchable? I guess if white does that, then black's c pawn would also be uncatchable. Those are technical terms. And so black does have, let's see, one extra pawn, two extra pawns in the endgame. White gets the outside pass pawn, but black has multiple pawns. Fascinating. Computer says it should be winning for black.
Yes, and that's primarily because the two pawns in the middle, they are untouchable. The white king can't hunt one pawn without letting the other pawn continue on to queen, and the black king can catch the A pawn in the meantime. And we're seeing there another